So now you've heard the whole solo, what we're now going to do is break the whole thing down into smaller phrases and licks and understand the basic concepts that are being used here, and hopefully you'll be able to then not just only use them in this solo and this particular sequence, but other jazz standards as well. Now let's talk a little bit about Grant Green. The reason I chose him as one of my subjects for the solo studies is because he's a fantastic guitarist for most beginner jazz guitarists to get into. His sound is quite accessible. He doesn't sound like a lot of his stuff is particularly complicated to play. He wasn't the most technical player, and also his language is incredibly precise, and you can really hear him playing through the changes on pretty much any solo that he plays on. So he's fantastic to get that kind of idea of playing through chord changes as much as possible. So hopefully that's what this solo is going to break down for you. So without further ado, let's see if we can start by looking at lick 1. Okay, so let's dive into lick number 1. Essentially what's happening here is we're playing over the last 2 bars of the sequence and into the first 3. Let's check it out slowly. Now essentially what's happening here is we are playing over a 2-5 of D minor into G7 for the first 2 bars, and then the next 2 bars, as you can see above that, is C major 7, and then we're going to move into C minor for the next part. So we've actually got a 5-bar lick. Now the main thing that you want to try and do when you're improvising is not play licks in a very blocky way. So what I could have done here is kind of put one lick over 2-5-1 into C major and then started another lick in C minor. But what I've done here is I've tried to kind of get this so it kind of flows into the next chord, which will give it a smoother sound. So let's break down the first part. This beginning part is over D minor 7, which is basically a descending blues scale in D. That then leads us into the major third of G7, which is B. We're going to go up the arpeggio, and then we've got these nice altered sounds here. So flat 9, sharp 9, and then we're down to our kind of bog standard root and flat 7, which lead us really nicely into C major. And notice how that line really outlines the changes of the 2, then the 5, and then into the 1. Now when we go into the C major 7 here, we're going to basically be playing very diatonically. There's nothing really outside of the scale here. One thing to look out for here is this nice use of thirds, which just breaks up the scale a little bit and makes it sound a bit more interesting. So we've got this sound. More interesting, and then of course we're moving into the C minor with this nice rhythmic motif, and that's something else that Grant Green uses a lot, which is this idea of rhythmic motifs to kind of end his phrases, and that's just all C minor. So nothing massively complicated there. Let's move on to lick number 2. Okay, so here's lick number 2. Now this is essentially using a few arpeggio ideas plus some scalic sort of things. So there's quite a lot going on in this lick. It's over this part of the sequence where it's descending through some chords here. So we've got D7 over C, D flat major over C, and then C major 7 before moving into A7, and then the kind of ending note is into the next part of the phrase, which is D minor. Okay, so over some really nice chord changes here. The beginning part will sound like this. So that is essentially using a simple technique that's used in bebop and a lot of jazz players, where we're just simply playing the arpeggio rather from the root. We're going to play it from the 3rd degree of the scale and then go one extra note of an extension to the 9. Okay, so what I'm basically playing on each of these chords is the 3, the 5, the 7 and the 9 on each of those, and obviously changing that for the chords. So when I'm playing it on D7, I'm playing F sharp, A, C and E. which is a F sharp minor 7 flat 5 or an F sharp half diminished. That will give me the 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7 and the 9. If I move that to D flat major, I'm playing F, A flat, C and E flat, and that's going to give us an F minor 7 arpeggio, which gives us the sound of a D major 9, and then when we move that down a semitone we get an E minor 7 arpeggio, which would be E, G, B and D, and that of course will give us a C major 9 sound. Okay, so quite a nice idea there. And then again, to break up the monotony, we've got a little bit of that keep going and going and going. We're then going to move down the scale there, which then leads us into the A7 altered. Now essentially all that's happening here is we're going down the scale and adding some nice little trills from the 5th, a semitone above, and then we're going from the sharp 9 and a semitone above, which is quite cool. And then a nice simple crotchet right at the end there. So if I play that all the way through, that gives us lick number 2. Let's move on to lick number 3. Okay, so here's lick number 3. This one is very, very straightforward. We've not got a huge amount of chromaticism in here, so there's nothing groundbreaking really, but it's a nice little phrase. It goes like this. Like that. Now the beginning part of the phrase is essentially an A minor triad, which will give us that same sort of idea we used in the last lick, which is using the 5th, the flat 7 and the 9, and that's over a D minor sound. Then we're going to go into the G7, and guess what, we've got a little trill again. And later on in this solo, you'll notice this gets used a lot. You hear it a lot in Grant Green's playing, leading into that 3rd degree of the next chord. Really, really useful. It sounds really strong, and that nice chromatic idea. Then we're going to play up through the arpeggio here. So essentially all he's doing there is doing the same thing we did in the last one, but with a slightly different rhythm. We've got the E minor 7 arpeggio, and then we're going to do sort of a Coltrane pattern here, C, D, E, G. So 1, 2, 3, 5 of the scale. And then we're going to do a really common Charlie Parker thing, which is where we're going to take a triad, which is C, G, E and C, bog standard C major triad, and we're going to approach each of those notes from one semitone below. Really easy thing to add to your playing, but sounds really effective. So let's have a listen to that lick one more time, and then we'll move on to lick number 4. Okay, here's lick number 4. Now this one you might notice from the last lick, it's using the same idea, but we've just transposed it into F minor, and we're just playing an F minor triad. So we're going into the flat 3, the root, the 5th, and then back to the flat 3 again, and again approaching all those from one semitone below with that nice rhythmic idea. And then everything in these next 2 bars over the B flat 7 and the E flat major 7 is all completely diatonic, but we're just playing it in a really nice phrase. And a little bit more interesting rhythm in this as well. So let's have a listen to that full phrase, and then we'll move on. Okay, let's move on to lick number 5. Here's lick number 5. Now essentially we're sort of starting with the same rhythmic idea that we began with, and we're using this same concept with the chromatic sort of lead in to the 3rd on the C major as well. So we've got a short sort of 2-5 lick into C major here. Let's have a listen to it. It goes 2, 3, 4. Really simple. We've got this nice chromatic idea run down to G. Then we've got the chromatic run up into the E. Okay, kind of surrounding that note. And then when we get to that, we're going to play C major pentatonic. This is another part of his playing. Again, it comes out of the blues sort of idea that the Grant Green used to use quite a lot. And sounds really nice. We've got this kind of lead into the E, nice and high, and then this nice rhythmic motif. Again, notice that in a lot of his ideas, there's this rhythmic motif that always ends his phrases. You'll hear that quite a lot in his playing, but again, nothing in terms of concept there particularly difficult, just sounds great as a little lick. Let's move on to lick number 6. So for lick number 6, we had to crowbar in some blues, and what better chord to do that over than a C minor 7. So here we're using the C blues scale. Really nice little idea, all triplets. And that's literally just going up the scale and then down the scale, nothing complicated. Then we get this nice rhythmic idea on the D7 to the D flat major 7 to the C major 7, and this is basically using the a sixth idea. So we're going from the third of the chords to the root of the chord, and then we're chromatically kind of working our way down and then ending like that. So let's have a listen to that whole lick now. Really simple. Okay, let's move on to lick number 7. So here's lick number 7. Now this is over, or getting into the last kind of sections of the song. So we're starting on C major 7. Then we've got sort of an A7 altered sound. Then we've got this nice descending bass line that's kind of a big part of this tune. So we go D minor 7, D minor 7 over C. That leads into B minor 7 flat 5, E7. Which then moves us into A minor 7, A minor 7 over G, and then our resolution note for this particularly is into the F sharp minor 7 flat 5. So what are we playing here? So we've got this sort of idea. 1, 2. Okay, so quite a lot to digest there. First part, over the C major 7, we're essentially just using a G triad, which again is those upper notes, but a small fragment of the chord. So we're using the 5, the 7, and the 9, and then we're doing a little scalic idea. So fairly nice. Then we're going to do this typical thing that you hear in quite a lot of these things over altered sounds. We're going to start actually with the natural fifth, which isn't in the natural fifth, the perfect fifth, I should say. And then we're going to chromatically work our way up to the flat 7, the little triplet. Then we're going to go to the root, flat 9, root again. And then we're going to go flat 5 into that fifth again. And that's leading us into that F really nicely. So quite a nice idea there on the A7. And then we get this really lovely lick. Now, I'll explain what I've done here. I've actually taken a 2-5 lick in C. So you could use this over a D7, a G7, and then a C major 7 if you particularly wanted. It would work there, but it's basically kind of working its way down to this B note, and this is a very common thing, and it's this idea of kind of going to this pedal note on the 5th of the D minor 7. So we do the D minor arpeggio, then we're going to chromatically work our way down to the 6th fret, which is kind of major 7, 5th, flat 7, 5th, and then we get down to that B note. Now normally that would be on G7, and you would get this sort of sound, and then you go into C major 7. So this will work over that, but I've done it actually over B minor 7 flat 5 into E7 altered, and that gives us some more interesting notes. So we get sort of a B diminished triad, which is of course part of the chord. And then this next part is really over the E7 altered, so we're using the sharp 9, the third, the flat 5, back to the third, sharp 9, flat 9, and then resolving into that nice strong 5th degree of A minor 7. And of course a bit of blues there right at the end. So let's have a listen to that lick one more time, and then we'll move on to lick number 8. So we're on to our penultimate lick. Lick number 8 is over a simple descending 2/5 pattern. Let's check it out. It goes. So it's essentially over a 2/5 in E minor, then a 2/5 in D minor, then a 2/5 in C, and then ending on that root. So yeah, very common sort of 2/5 descending pattern there. The beginning part's all based around, I would say, a diminished arpeggio. So really we're playing off the B7 here, flat 9. We've got a couple of altered notes in there, so we've got the sharp the 9 and the flat 9, but yeah, I think he's thinking more kind of diminished chords there. This is all diatonic in the key of C, so nothing complicated there. And then we're doing a simple triadic idea from over D minor. Notice that pedal idea from the last lick, and then we're just going to end on the root. So nothing complicated there. Let's move on to the next one. So here we are at our final lick, lick number 9. Now this is over the last 1-6-2-5 of the song before we end on our final kind of tonic chord. So it's basically, and then we're ending just there with a little flourish as well, but we'll get there in a minute. So let's have a listen to the lick. So quite nice, this one. The first part's basically just outlining an A7 arpeggio. Really simple. Then we're going to do a simple descending line with that little trill again. And look, it's this little pattern up to the 3rd degree of C major again. Notice how much he uses that. Really uses it a lot. Then the last part, I'm just outlining an A minor 7 arpeggio, and that will kind of give you a C6 sort of sound, and we're just kind of going back and forth between the chord tones there. Just gives you that sound. So that concludes all the licks now. So hopefully you've got to the end there, and maybe you've picked up a few ideas. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below, and if you enjoyed what you see, give it a like, and also subscribe. I'm going to be doing a few more of these solo studies as time progresses. Hopefully see you in the next video.